computers bring me no joy anymore. Like, I don't like computers. I'll still use them.
Right.
I understand that, I live in a contemporary society and this is necessary for me. But I have actively tried to pick up no new skills associated with computers.
Welcome to Scene Shift, the podcast, episode 5. Today, our conversation touches on the shared respect for rigor, a love of tools, and the strong distaste for imposed rules, prescribed norms, that instantly formed a strong bond between us. Shing's unique vision, skill, and creative fluidity were evident immediately, and Maureen and I have been lucky enough to witness Shing's interests in storytelling expand from the classification of set designer. In this episode, we get to share our wonder and awe in Shing's work while hearing details about their favorite cordless drills, liberating gender norms through puppetry, and embracing physical labor. We broach many subjects in this conversation, yet one simple sentence has remained in our thoughts. Shing says decidedly, "Computers do not make me happy." I ask you, listener, to pause and think about what makes you happy in your life and work. Okay, now let's get on with this podcast and hear the simple statement in context. Thanks for listening today.
I'm Maureen Weiss. I'm a performance designer.
I'm Sibyl Wickersheimer.
I am a set designer, and I had the pleasure of working with Sibyl on the book Scene Shift. This book is about conversations between theatrical designers, specifically scene design.
We have been really interested in continuing our conversations with set designers, discussing where they are now, where they want to go, and what they bring to the practice of set design. We want to continue that practice of talking to each other because it is such a solitary art form. This podcast grew out of that continued interest in conversation and the support of our creative producer, Teichura.
Please join us today.
To tell a little bit about Shing. Here's like the words that go along with Shing. Shing is an installation artist, cartoonist, and experience designer who explores Mythic Americana, new human rituals, and collaborative world building. They have written graphic novels, creative immersive installations, and games, as well as received many awards for their work. We met them when they were entering the world of scenic design, and boy, how their world has completely expanded. I have some questions about some of these things that Sibyl and I were just chatting about. One of the terms in here that I'm like amazed that you could take it apart so completely in the best way is new human rituals.
Yeah.
Like, what? It's perfect for what you do and sort of the pattern of your work. I heard what Sibyl's thoughts on that were for like how she sees it in your work. But I'm also curious to hear both sides of your thought of that term.
Yeah, totally. No, I think that throughout my life, I've just always seen ritual as a way to understand and parse the world we live in, especially when it's, terribly confusing and we're just trying to figure out what we want to do. And I think I've also, correspondingly with that, been very interested in play, specifically in emergent play and how we tend to make meanings out of patterns. And I think as I kind of began exploring these things in my work, I don't think it was something I set out to explore. I think I just did things I was led to, and at some point when I sat down and looked back at my body of work, and was like, all right, we need to write some artist statements now. It became very clear that was a pattern that was emerging.
Shing, when I first came to your house, and it was when you were building props for one of the productions, right? And you made those amazing, the giant egg prop that the guy came out of.
You remember
that? That was an amazing prop. So you were already starting to make these and collect like small pieces of things and create stories that went around with them. So rocks and twigs and bone, and then you would make your own versions of those to add to the mix. So you were finding these natural items and then cataloging them, naming them, having a story with them, drawing them. And that's how I see the collections that Oracle Bird sort of creates, right? And so I see those as your particles of rituals for yourself. And when I reread The Legend of Auntie Poe yesterday, and my son read it, and I went in to check on him to see what his response was, and he literally had his jaw open while he was reading. We were looking at it online, and the response that I felt really strong, because I know this background of your work in these small pieces that you've created into your own rituals, it really was May's understanding of ritual through her father, and not understanding those rituals until Polly's death, and then understanding, oh, we can use Chinese rituals to explain and help the processing of this death to the white loggers. And then they've made their own rituals that I think is what that term New American mythology, and New American rituals, that is what I thought of first when Maureen said that statement. I hadn't really processed it until we started talking again this morning. But that's where I saw these creations of myths and rituals that were there, and now have just been adapted for the language necessary today.
That's actually amazing to hear, because I honestly had not even thought of this through line from, those little creatures out of sticks and rocks that I was making in my early 20s to, what I consider like my more like experienced adult work that I'm making now. Kind of tying into that, I was in Crete last year, and this is something that's been coming up in my work a lot more recently, and I honestly just understood that connection like in this current moment. But I was in a museum on Crete, the Heracleon
Sounds
museum.
right.
And I was looking at all of these ancient ritual objects and ancient sculptures, and there was this whole display that was full of little objects that looked like a kid had made it, and that some other kid kind of came up and was like, oh, I want to make that too, show me. And they were all identical-ish, but very similar in technique. And it kind of made me think of the ways we share ritual, and the way we share, honestly, the way we share little guys. Like, humans have been making these beautiful little objects like for millennia.
Right, but it gives us control over, like, telling stories. If we make this guy that's outside of ourselves and we tell the story through them, we can maybe recreate our own story at the same time, is what I sort of think of. I mean, that's sort of what I think of what I do. But I do know that, like, the idea of puppetry is one way to open that up. And I know you're really sort of on the threshold of a lot of different puppets you're creating.
Yes.
But it feels like it's also part of this through line. And in some ways, this remaking of the new human rituals relates to your ability to enter a scenario, and if the normative course, let's say, says you're supposed to complete this grad school, there's a part of Shing that I see as being able to say, well, you could tell me that, or I could make a choice that feels like a new ritual.
Well, the other thing that's really interesting about what you are calling the little guys, right? The small pieces, is that you're personifying them.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
And so,
yeah.
And all of the, like, your trajectory that you're on, you seem to be personifying. You've always been creating characters, and they are, I think, iconic because even though they're not you, they could be you, right? You put yourself into them. And there's something about those puppets that I think, even if they don't look like a Shing, right? But they are still being personified, and they're still in some ways you, speaking as you. And there's a similarity there to Oracle Bird again.
It's so curious. Shing, can I ask, like, when you and I first met, I'm not sure that you were personifying as much. Like, because we were having to focus so much on telling a story that somebody handed us when we were in grad school for set design, that I don't think I got to see that freedom until after. Does that make sense? Like, or did you always do that as a kid and I just missed it in that window?
I think I definitely used to do that a lot more often as a child. And I think a lot of our childlike pretend tendencies are left behind when we become adults and need to have real jobs and real career paths. And obviously, I was in graduate school the first time in pursuit of a real career path. And that, specifically, I think was one of my early dissatisfactions with the role of a scenic designer. That, while you do have a lot of room to tell a story, while it is a very collaborative art, I often felt that I was in the role of trying to interpret a story that someone else had already told, or that someone else already had in their mind. And a lot of times I was feeling more like a tool than a fellow creative. And of course, there's a lot to say about the fact that I was 22 at the time and didn't quite have the words or the personality to push back against things that I was uneasy about or didn't feel creative enough about. But I think that, one of the reasons that I quit graduate school was because I think I ultimately felt like I wanted more control over the stories that I got to tell. And it's actually very strange to me how rare it is to have directors who are also scenic designers. Because for me, so much of the story is told with the set and it's told with space. And I think that's kind of the life and world and career I've been building. It's, I actually do want to be a director. I want to be a director and I want to be a writer who does very much think space is important.
Yes.
And who believes that, the story can be told with space.
Yeah.
I think you're taking back the storyteller mode within that design language. And so it's very clear because even the characters in your graphic novels are storytellers, right? Like May is a storyteller. The kids and the other characters are asking for stories. Maureen and I have always been curious about your career choices from the moment when you recognized that you wanted the ownership of the storytelling, but you didn't necessarily, being young, we don't really know what that the dissatisfaction made you make a choice, right? You leave grad school and then start to work for a corporate company. How has that next step informed your next few choices? And when in that course did you see the next direction that you wanted to take?
I mean, let's be clear that I took that first corporate job because I needed money.
Of course.
And what it ended up being was actually an environment that I really thrived in. Not because of the corporation, but because I was actually working on a team with, really amazing, supportive women. What that actually made it clear to me was the people I worked with could actually make me extremely passionate about the work I was doing. And ultimately, I did leave that job because while I enjoyed what I was doing, I knew that art was what I really want to do. Because of that, it really shifted the way I work. It really made me prize creative collaboration almost even more than story, even more than the work was being done. And when I began building large-scale installation art, what I wanted to do was to create, good, comfortable, very creative and exploratory working environments. And I just had such a strong belief that if that environment was good, if the people I was working with was good, then the work would be good. Okay, so it actually made me stress out about my art a lot less.
Because the collaboration was strong.
Because the collaboration, it was I can trust the people I am with. And whether because of age or because of the way, often in my early theater years, I was often thrown into collaborative environments where I didn't necessarily get to pick my collaborators. once I got to pick my collaborators, it was so clear to me that that's what I needed to do.
Okay. And so following that, did you continue to work with similar people, or how do you find that collaborative team that sort of keeps you going?
God, I mean, so much of it is vibe, right? Like, it's like,
A little bit of luck.
honestly, a little bit of luck, vibe.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just, would I enjoy having dinner with this person? Like, can we hang out? Like, can we have a conversation for an hour without it feeling too awkward? And, ultimately, like, do I like their art? And
Okay.
and in many ways, like, sometimes I don't even have to be madly in love with their art.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's weird. I don't actually feel like I've been that picky about my collaborators, and I do feel like I've gotten very lucky in the last 10 years of my life.
So when you left, let's say, and your first decision, like, I'm going to just sort of follow my art for a little bit, how long did you give yourself to sort of see if you could feel okay in that space, or did you completely feel okay in that space right away? Like, of self-direction. I think that's the part that is, like, hard for me.
I had essentially bought myself
I know.
about a year of being able to flail and explore a little because of that corporate job. Like, I did not quit with no safety net. I quit with safety net. I was married at the time. There was no chance of me being homeless if my art didn't work out. And I do think I was very lucky at that time that it did work out. And I did also have a lot of hustle in my bones at the time.
Yeah.
So I was very, very intent on making that work out. And I do not necessarily think that the paths in art that I chose at the time, that was very comic centric. It was very much, in a sense, I was an independent artist, but I was making more, like, more little things you could sell. And I think what I really wanted to do was kind of build big art, like tell big stories. And I still wasn't quite on that path at the time, but I did know that there needed to be some hustle in there in order to just buy myself even more of that exploration time. So I think I'm in a place right now where I can generally sustain an independent art career pretty well, and with a fair amount of room for exploration. And because of that, I think my art has really changed and evolved much more quickly in the last 5 years than ever before. And of course, acknowledging that, during the pandemic, many of us did not have an awful lot to do. So I actually did get a lot of time to focus on my art in those couple years spent at home.
Yeah, I mean, you use your time wisely, and you're obviously very driven. And part of that is perhaps that your own rituals of making are just what you do. That's you, and you've always done that, right? So I think for many of us in this space, I'll say the three of us, we're pretty driven because we like what we do and we're invested in it. And it's, there's always a backup of ideas that we want to get back to. And so not having enough time, when you suddenly do, you're able to kind of dive in because you know what that next thing is you'd want to spend that time on is, right? Which is nice. And then during the last, 10 years, as you are, your evolution of your own gender identity has been a path you've been on. How has that paralleled your career path and informed it?
Oh, gosh. I mean, first I'll say that, yes, absolutely. I think it's definitely a combination of, like, yes, I always have a lot of ideas. At this point in my life, I also have a lot of skills. And I also need to point out that I have no children. So I don't think I have a lot of time, but comparatively speaking, I do have quite a bit of time. And I think throughout all of this career meandering and searching, I've often been, I think there's a very, like, primal instinct to it as well. It's like, what makes my body feel good? Like, what do I what labor does my body enjoy being in? And I think there's a very strong parallel there in kind of that tendency to be searching for the types of labor that makes my body feel good, and in searching for the gender that makes my body feel good. And for context, I am non-binary. And I spent some time last year experimenting with hormonal transition and decided that really wasn't really something I wanted either. But I do think that there's an identical sort of pushback that my body and brain holds towards being told what to do. You know, like if I'm told I need to decide on a career path, my instinct is to say no. If I'm told I need to decide on a gender, the same instinct is there. And when you were talking about, like, you know, embodying little creatures outside yourself, I actually think that's why my puppetry journey has been very illuminating for me and also very healing in a way. And I think, you know, performance and puppetry skills have been something I've really had to actively pursue in the last couple years. Like, that's something that wasn't specifically part of my academic training. And it's been really connecting myself to my own body, which I guess seems strange because puppetry is inherently an art that if you're doing it right, no one's really looking at you. But that's what drew me to it, because, like, gender dysphoria often feels like you're just puppeting your own body. And if you look at it that way, like, when I'm puppeteering, I am just controlling one body that's controlling another body. But I made that other body, and I have full control over that body. I got to decide what that other body looked like. So it actually feels like a very liberatory practice in terms of gender.
I mean, your creatures also speak to that, where I don't know, how do you feel when you create the creatures? Do you think about their gender as creatures? Because it's so inherent in natural, you know, beings that there are so many there are actually quite a few creatures that are non-binary, which is really interesting.
Yes.
Isn't maybe named in science classes as you're, you know, growing up.
Yeah, I think I've always been very attracted to forms and shapes that do not have gender. Even if I might sometimes gender the little creatures I sculpt, I think of many of them as without gender, which is also how I think of myself. And the creatures I create almost never have humanoid forms. Like, they're almost always based on, you know, creature, monster, like strange blob. And that sort of lack of gender is something I find appealing. Like, if you look at a lizard in the wild, you're not really ascribing gender to that lizard, you know? You can ascribe gender to a dog, but you're probably wrong. And I enjoy that kind of vagueness in terms of playing with gender.
Mm-hmm. Even when I taught puppetry, like, we would just say, like, pick up, you know, whatever the object is, and they always had some, like, a low voice, a high voice. So there was a lot of, like, once you put, like, just trying to say hello for the object gave it all these characteristics. And then we wouldn't ask further what the gender was, but it had a bunch of characteristics just by how that voice goes. Or a lot of times the students did want to give them names, but even those names were often like scraggly or, you know, like something, you know, it wasn't like, I mean, and even if it was George because you were sort of making a statement on what is bland, right? So, yeah, it's a really, I mean, puppetry is infinitely fascinating. I like how you described that your body almost is more free once you've let go of it and you're in control of somebody else's. Like, when you're manipulating the puppet, you feel the most like yourself because you've let go of having to be anything but that other thing. It's a great description.
Well, it's like your lifeblood is the life of the puppet, right? So it's an extension of yourself. In this,
I mean, it very literally is.
And it's so much fun. I love watching the puppeteers. I'm probably not supposed to be watching them, but I love it.
And I don't mean to make it sound as if, like, the puppet is moving in exactly the way I want it to, because that is very often not true.
No,
like,
no,
it
it's so
almost
hard.
never moves in
Yeah.
the way that I want it to. But the process of learning how this new body I've created moves is in itself it's a very sort of weird healing internal process. Because by sort of, what it feels like is, if I can learn this strange body that I've made, then perhaps I could also learn the strange body I've been assigned.
Oh.
Like, I can
Wow.
figure out how to work with this, where this is, my physical body and my physical form.
Right. Oh, that's interesting.
Is that similar to how you used graphic novels as an artist in a way that to better understand yourself and your story?
In a sense, I think I am very driven towards the type of storytelling that graphic novels as a medium tends to provide. I think making graphic novels has made me learn how to summarize things and stories that are very important to me. And that process of repackaging my stories, which in many ways do feel very personal, for a more commercial audience,
Right.
is also an exercise in learning how to package myself.
Yeah, that's a really great way of saying it.
We've been contemplating this idea of ambition in art and in artists, and trying to unpack in this next series of podcasts, like, what are our goals? Can we drive those goals towards a moral ambition? And I think you do that really effectively in the teaching style within the graphic novels. So I go back to that drawing you did of the driver, right? The screw gun. And
Oh, that
it's
one.
one of my favorite drawings, and it's been a while since you did that, but I found that love for the drawings of the saws and the tools that the loggers are using, and your instinct to teach within the story context is really fascinating. And so I'm just curious, because what I hear you say is that your interests are in trying to commercialize your art forms in an effort to live, in an effort to get it out to a wider audience, of course, right? And so can you talk a little bit about how the collaboration with maybe producers or corporations might help you to get that wider or broader audience, or if you have tried that route?
In terms of, graphic novels, like my book is published with an imprint of Penguin Random House. So that is one of the big 5 publishers. That, I think, is the most like corporate experience I've had in terms of making art. And it was actually a very, very good experience. My editor and all my collaborators in that book are absolutely brilliant. And I felt very supported by them. And I think in many ways, I was working with a creative team of entirely women of color. And I do think that was a significant factor there. But generally, in making work that is more corporate, I do feel like I've had to slightly sanitize my voice. And that in this respect, I do feel is okay. Like, I am writing books for 12-year-olds. I do not need, my children's book to represent me I do not need my children's book to represent every facet of me. But generally speaking, I think that I have felt the most happy when I am doing work outside of the corporate realm. And I am going to continue to write graphic novels. It is both, an income, and I do very much enjoy the amount of reach that my stories have in this context. But writing graphic novels, this process takes somewhere between 2 to 4 years to do. And more than anything else, I really thrive on quick work. Like, I love having an idea and then being able to execute it in a fairly short period of time. Like, I thrive on rapid prototyping. I think that's, why I ended up as a game designer. And that work is just simply best done independently.
I think Sibyl tried to get the newest incarnation of the Oracle Bird, and it sold out like right away.
Oh, the book is available. The book is the game. It is a solo journaling game where you build your own divination system. And there was a special edition that had like a few more bits and pieces of it. Like the cards for the Oracle Bird were included, even with work that, I think like over 3,000 copies of that book were printed. But even in that work, I like having some sort of element that's still handmade, that's still me literally making it. And that is one of those reasons that those things are limited edition, because I do want to touch it with my own hands and I do want to package it myself. It is so important for me to be involved in the labor of my own work. That almost like obsession with the process of labor is really important to me. And that's to tie it back to, the drawing of the drill and the images of all the logging tools in my books. I feel like I always want to bring back the conversation to labor. Like, who tells the stories? Are the people who get to tell the stories also the people who are doing the physical work to tell the story? And kind of making those two things meet is so important to me. And part of what I want to do as part of my more commercial facing work is to really reveal the labor and processes behind this work. Because especially more and more as, we get into the conversation about AI and, conversations about what artistic skills do computers have. And, my opinion is not, they do. Computers are not creative. But that, I think, makes it more important to retain kind of those human marks in our work. And when I say that, I'm thinking about like the way you apply paint, Maureen, like the way you are always applying like 20 layers of paint just to show the way paint flakes off. And that's something that literally only a human can do. Like the fact that the paint flakes off is a human mark.
And it is ritual. Like it is that, when you use a tool so specifically and use it as a skilled craftsman, you're using it over and over and over again. You are understanding the way that you hold it a certain way, the way that you carve with it a certain way, the way that you do everything. And like the way that you were talking about the loggers as a dance with each other with their saw blades, which are incredibly dangerous, you're intrinsically knowing it. That again is like a ritual that you learn with your body. And I think the connection to your body is really important with rituals, right? So that makes a lot of sense. And it actually occurred to me as we were thinking about, questions that we had for you, like what is your favorite tool if you have one? And what do you have both conceptual and like emotional feelings about that tool? Or is it purely about what you can make with that tool?
Oh my goodness, that I feel like I need so much more time to think on this question. I'll try my best. I think that the cordless drill has been like, my long time favorite. Like I have been through so many of them. They discontinued the 12-volt DeWalt drill that I enjoy using, and that is in that illustration that we were talking about. And I actually bought 3 off eBay so I could continue using them. It does turn out that when, you buy old drills, they do all die at the same time. So I am now on a pretty standard 18-volt drill. It's great. It's just such a versatile tool. And I think conceptually, it is something that bores, and I too am sometimes quite boring. I'm kidding. Sorry.
Well, the thing about boring is it's just like, it's something boring into you. So it's somebody that's able to accept hard things. So in some way, I can see that. But also, if you were to say, how would you picture Shing? It would be with the drill.
It is very
like my
versatile.
Earliest memory. Yeah, it's very versatile. My earliest memory is with Shing and I and figuring out the drill.
It is. But more recently, because of all my puppetry work and because of my marionette carving, I really love my bandsaw. And it's just, that is
That's
a
a good
great
one.
tool. That is my favorite tool. I have no conceptual reason for loving it yet, but I'll think on that and get back to you.
I like that you tried to put the concept on the tool, Sibyl. That's a
I
great
know,
drive.
I know.
I
It's
just
like
love tools.
I think my art in general, I've really been leaning into, what is the human instinct to make? So I've been really coming back to like a knife recently. And that's also tied to the fact that I've really leaned into cooking as one of my art forms recently. And obviously my cooking knife and my carving knife is not the same knife, but fundamentally, these are very simple tools that humans have been using for ever. And I think that more and more lately, I've been leaning into things that we can make that are really truly quite ancient. Like I've been developing a ceramics practice. I've been leaning more into carving by hand. And honestly, like this makes my body feel good. Like it feels like I'm part of this very long primal lineage of people who make things when I use these particular materials and tools.
I was kind of curious, is there some point, or like you started down a path of creating something or making something or even utilizing a tool that you were like, this just doesn't actually feel right? And you had to let go of that process or that thing? Because from what I can see, you have done such an amazing job of like putting things to their fruition. But I'm curious about the things that you just threw. You were like, no.
I think I used to be relatively competent at CAD, and now I'm kind of done with it. Like, I hand draft everything now. And as annoying as it might be, and I think, Maureen, you'll remember me as the person who was like, CAD's fine. This is easy. Let's just do it.
Yes, I know.
And,
Thank God for you.
and like, frankly, I'm done. Like, I computers bring me no joy anymore. Like, I don't like computers. I'll still use them.
Right.
I understand that, I live in a contemporary society and this is necessary for me. But I have actively tried to pick up no new skills associated with computers. I just cannot bring it in myself to care.
No, I feel
anymore.
That. Yeah. Because they just keep coming at me. Like there's more new and more new that there's like never an end to it.
There's always something new to install. There's always some new social media platform we're going to have to learn. And I just don't care.
I'm going to take that away from you because that's really like, that's something I need to hear, especially right now, because I never feel better after I've like done my work there. But I'm also been thinking a lot along the lines of your labor idea. It's just so, after having taught students for a long time and watched myself for a long time, it's like, you really realize that we could be we're all putting in the same labor on something, but there's like, I could say, do it this way to a particular student. I could show them exactly how, but their way of doing it is going to be a whole different kind of labor and a whole different kind of thing coming out, especially if it's all hand. And I think that like you're speaking about it in this way is really important, especially with the AI comparison. But yeah.
And I do think that's beautiful. Like the fact that everyone is going to go through a different process and the end product, I think having the marks of that process be very visible is what is so interesting to me.
Yeah, my stuff just is always a mess.
Mine's a mess too. You know
this
what?
will not change.
Maureen, just start calling that mess marks of
Beauty.
Process, and I think we're all good.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, all you really need is a pencil. It's like the more direct approach to getting something out of your brain. And so the problem that I think most, for set designers, I think trying to get that imagined space, which is so connected to text and the story and so on, out of your head is how do you pull it out with the pencil onto the paper, And because I always find like it's a little, in my imagination, it's fluctuating based on the moment of the play, and so then it becomes hard to draw, hard to get it all out at once. So it just like drawing little moments and like just starting to put that mark on the paper breaks away the
Yeah.
procrastination or the whatever's standing in my way, and
Right.
it's just a pencil, and you can carry
It's
a
just a
pencil around.
pencil.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Definitely.
you're very good and fast with one, Shing, though. You are so fast
you are
when you're drawing. I mean, I just remember seeing you drafting, even with your hand. It was always very quick. I now need to bring that skill back in, but it's true. Like, you sort of find the tool that speaks fastest for you in some ways. What's your next thing now?
Right now, I'm working on a marionette opera. I'm working on a marionette opera that's also a short film. It's called The Last 15 Minutes, and it is about the residents of a shitty apartment building in Koreatown deciding to have dinner together in the 15 minutes before they are eaten by a giant kaiju. So kaiju is in
God.
Godzilla, So, it's an excuse to build puppets. It's kind of hilarious because now I'm just building models at 1/6 scale, and I'm like, this is just my design assistant days again. Like, it is a little easier since it's my own work, and 1/6 scale is pretty big. It's great. It really feels like, all the skills that I've developed over time, like all the time I've put into acquiring these hyper-specific, strange, like, skills are all coming back in this particular project, and it's been really fun. I'm collaborating with a musician for the first time. Well, I've collaborated with the same musician before, but now we are collaborating on a longer project, and it's amazing. Like, I can write something and I give it to him, and it comes back and it's a song, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean we've made a song? This is incredible. So it's really interesting, and it's also kind of my biggest, most sprawling collaboration yet, which is really requiring me to have such a level of trust in my crew that I don't think I've ever had to have before. Well, I feel like a lot of my work, I have generally been able to do every part of it, even if I'm not doing it quite as well as the person I've hired to.
Yeah.
And it's always kind of been like, oh, if, this carpenter drops out at the last minute, I could step in. I wouldn't do as good a job, but, like, I could fill in. And with this film project, it's like, oh, I know nothing about post-production. Like, I know nothing about sound or music. I do have to fully trust,
right,
my collaborative partners. And that's been a really amazing, a very liberating, a very scary experience, but it's been going great so far. And not only that, but most of my production crew, they're theater people, because I think that, it's so funny because you've all heard me complain about the work days of theater, but, like, production crew on film works 12-hour days, and that's what IATSE fought for. Like, it used to be worse. And, like, while I used to be mad about, like, staying, in a theater until midnight if I'm running a show, but at least I didn't walk in until, like, 6 p.m.
Right.
So we're theater people, and we've just decided to just build better working conditions. Like, we don't have to have shitty working conditions just because we're working in film. We can just decide to be better. So that's been a really fun process as well.
And that sort of brings me back to just Sibyl and we've really sort of thought about this term moral ambitions. We're not sure what we think of it, but we're just like, we're curious, definitely curious about what it is. And I'm wondering, like, how you sort of like, you're in the position, you're like, I don't want to work this way, and you just say it. And how you navigate all your work environments with the knowledge that you have these boundaries. Like, are there sometimes you turn the job down, you turn the environment down, or do you go in there and change it as you're doing it?
I think I have been very lucky to have essentially been my own employer for some time now. So most creative projects that I have are projects where I actively decide the workplace conditions. And what I have heard is, from many of my crew who then go on, who do not have the same ability to just kind of, choose what projects I work on. I feel that many of them do go on and kind of actively advocate for themselves and better workplace conditions now that they have experienced them. And I do turn work down when I feel that it's not a good work match. I was not like super involved in it, but at USC, where I also teach as an adjunct, the School of Cinematic Arts recently unionized their adjuncts, and that actually made me feel good about, being a small part of that union organizing and working there. Because it's like, yes, we are making movements towards better workplace environments. So I think generally I would say my work and moral
ambitions.
My moral ambitions as a whole.
Do you know what that is? It's the
Please
will to
describe
make the quote from it's a book that's called Moral Ambitions. And the quote is, moral ambition is the will to make the world a wildly better place, to devote your working life to the great challenges of our time, whether that's climate change or corruption, gross inequity, or the next pandemic. It's a longing to make a difference and to build a legacy that truly matters.
I love that. But the short answer is yes, I do feel that there is a constant vein in the work I take, the work I do, and the work I produce that has a very anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, anti-colonial edge to it. And I think I do tend to prefer a more gentle approach to these things. Like, oh, you're reading a fun little comic book? Well, surprise. You're actually reading about immigrant labor. But I do feel that that approach has worked very well for me. And you know me, I'm a small, very unintimidating looking person. And I do feel that that allows me to be in rooms that many other people with my political views are not even allowed in. And I definitely, as much as possible, try to take those opportunities to very gently ask questions.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's sort of this idea that we can name it, right? That we can say we're out here with our ambitions as artists, that they're somehow moral. I mean, we don't start from that lens, right? We're starting with the instinct to make something and share something, and it is more subtle. And I think that's my as we unpack this idea and question for ourselves where we want to take what we have to give the world, where we want to take it to the next step. It's not that easy to just say, we have this, we're going to shove it down your throat, right? That's how I feel like the term itself and this Rutger Bregman School for Moral Ambition, it's quite pushy, and coming back to it and unpacking it a little bit more and trying to figure out what they're doing, because it is becoming a corporation as a branding and as an idea that has money behind it. It becomes a corporate idea, which is actually the antithesis of what artists do. And so that to me, and I think I have this same feeling that you do, Shing, which is as soon as I'm told I must do something and follow these rules, I suddenly go, well, let me look at these rules then, because I'm not sure I am able to follow these rules, because the first thing that I see when I get a rule is how easy it is to break.
Yeah.
And so it's that absolute of where's the flexibility on that rule? Because I could see 100 different ways that won't work, because of this or this, and they might be subtle or small, and maybe that's the reason for having a rule. But I tend to always come at it with, I just know how to break that rule. So I'm not sure where that makes me fit, right? And as a teacher, I think that makes me valuable, because I can ask the question, at least, well, how do you break that? It's more interesting when you break it.
Yeah.
So I think that's what attracts me to your career and your path so much, Shing. But I feel that I also just enjoy all of the pieces that you make in telling stories.
Yeah.
And they're just so lovely. And every time you get that opportunity to teach us something, I just feel it's icing.
Right. It goes back to sort of what you described really so well, which is that hustle. Like, I think that's sort of how I see you fitting into this moral ambition. It's like the hustle is part of that. Like, I don't want my students to be scared to push themselves, because there's a part of me that's like, I don't want to sell myself, but don't deny the hustle inside your body that's saying create the work. Because
Yeah.
like you're churning to create the work because it's got to get out of you, and you at the same time can expand what people think as you're doing it.
And I think on top of that, I mean, the world's going to say no to you so many times. It's going to say no to your ideas. It's going to tell you to tone them down. It's going to tell you to, like, you know, put your radical ideas back into a box. So why do it to yourself? Like don't pre-censor yourself, because there's so much out there that's going to try and do it to you. And when it does, you know, you can decide whether to push back or not, depending on how much money you need on that particular day. But certainly don't do it for them. Like,
but allow the hustle.
allow the hustle. Like, allow your body to make what it wants to make. Allow your brain to, you know, be true to itself.
So next up, I'm going to be coming to an opera, I guess, or seeing it in as a movie.
You're going to see it as a 15-minute short film.
Amazing.
Performed entirely with puppets.
Are you going to be performing with a puppet? Can I see you, like, holding your puppet?
Like right now?
Well, you could do it right now. Yes, please. But also in the movie?
Yes. Again, with the whole, like, you know, showing process and labor, I am beginning and ending it with the visible puppeteers. And then we're going to zoom in and, you know, treat it like a more traditional film. But it will definitely have the marks of human labor and process, because that's important to me. And I want people to know that people are making this. Yes. I will be a puppeteer.
Shing.
Yeah. I'm director, writer, production designer, and puppet director. It's a lot of hats to wear, but you know what? I'm not the producer or the assistant director or the composer or the voice actor. So all that actually feels great to me. Like, it actually feels like much less work than I usually do.
Wow.
I can't wait to see that. Thank you so much for talking with us. We were so excited to hear about this journey.
It was so lovely talking with you all.